Okay, let's talk about language. Language for system philosophy. About 2 days ago, not today, it was yesterday. Yesterday, during philosophy class, there was I brought up the topic of language, how language, how I put it into words. Okay. So basically, we have our understanding of the world, right? And we have our perception of the world. And then our language, a lot of people think that we think in a language. And that language that, when we think and we translate our thought into language, we loses a lot of information. So that's the problem of language, which is language difference from person to person because everyone has their own private language that only they understand. And there are issues of language being this norm of society and culture. It sometimes applies certain bias to your way of thinking. And it is true, but my way of understanding is language is not that powerful. In system philosophy, language is just a way of communication with other people. So the only reason why language exists is for one person to talk to another person and exchange ideas in a platform that is easier. Because let's face it, to transfer true thought, like to transfer the exact emotion of how I'm thinking, is too much information. So much information that without the abstraction of language, it wouldn't be possible for us to communicate just poor form of ideas. So in the end, what I did to the class was I brought up this topic that yes, there is true knowledge of this world, and we have our perception of this true knowledge of the world, which is our knowledge. But the true knowledge of this world is something that we can never get a hold of because our way of perceiving things are flawed. It means it's not perfect. That's why our way of perceiving knowledge, the true knowledge, is always less. And our language basically just language is basically an abstract of our knowledge into words so that we can use it easily. But it have like abstraction. For example, people just in language, for example, the word friendship. In language, it's so simple. It's just one word. It explains the basic concept of friendship. However, friendship is much more than just a word, and it is definition. And those details are something that language cannot define. Therefore, language is not that powerful. However, in Worf, he's another philosopher. He made philosophy. He made language play and exert a very important role in philosophy, but it doesn't. And another thing about language is that, for example, I know two languages, Chinese and English, and I can transfer English version of system philosophy to the Chinese version of system philosophy. Although, what I can confirm is that for system philosophy, English translation is much better than Chinese version. Apparently, Chinese language in general, Chinese language just doesn't provide. I feel like Chinese language have been outdated in terms of technology and futuristic conceptual development. Their Chinese their way of talking is very traditional. Chinese Chinese language in general is very traditional. As you might tell, Chinese language is one of the oldest languages in the world. It uses symbols, so yeah. When I try to translate system philosophy to Chinese, it's really difficult. However, in English, I still have to come up with my own terms, even for English. And I believe English is one of the newer language in existence that have been always changing and keeping up to the standard. And English is a very simple language with very powerful grammar that supports complex thought. And still, system philosophy needs to create new words on top of existing English system. But this problem of language is still an issue in the eyes of fundamentalists who believe language itself it makes philosophy flawed. But no. You know why? There are many concepts. For example, in system philosophy, just random up. It's the dot concept, the dotting effect. The dotting effect in system philosophy is very simple. You have two dots, and that dot connect you to a very complex concept. Just you can put two languages, for example, two words. System philosophy, just two words, system and philosophy. It connect you to entire depths. So much that if you think about system philosophy, just in your mind, for I don't know, like 100 years, maybe you can't come up with the entire law of system philosophy. You could. System philosophy, arrow points, you have to make your. Of course, these two words have its own definition, but when they line up, when you say it together, yes, system philosophy is how system and philosophy works together. In system, you think of computer system, system is a set of pattern in things, and philosophy is a study of thinking. How would you connect those things together and you get deeper concept? So language, I believe that language, even though it's flawed, it doesn't hurt the understanding of philosophy. Doesn't typically. So that's why philosophy is not something that you can teach by just reading. You have to really think and fill in the blanks between the words. And talking about language, actually during I remember 2 years or 1 or 2 years. I believe it's much more later than much before 1 year, but before 2 years. That's when the concept involved with one of the project involved with now that project I'll put a pause to it because it's not the priority, but that project was value. You exchange way of communication with values rather than language. But that is very technical. The concept works basically instead of you telling another person using the abstraction of words, use values about how you exactly feel about something in terms of values. And basically that would be the native way of your mind, the native way of thinking. Basically you abstract your thought into values and then you transfer values over so that you can understand values. Apparently people are really good at processing values. That's why money is one of the most important thing in this world, because people can recognize value extremely well. I believe that there's much more information on the fundamental level of how that principle can actually work, which I'm not going to talk about because that's the back end research of value system. But the basic concept is this: people are really good at processing values, not numbers. Why values? Because values, you don't care about the difference. For example, for numbers, 110, you have to process the difference in 90. For values, it's not like that. That's why our mind is extremely powerful at processing this. Because number, a lot of people fail math class, even like fundamental math, people fail at it. Or for values, people never fail at it. Why? For example, is this painful? Yes. What makes it less painful? If you say this is not painful. Why? This makes it painful. Why this doesn't? No, that was a bad example. Value got something to do with yes or no. And an abstraction of how much of a yes and how much of a no it is. And people is really good at it. That's why our entire behavior of the entire humanity is run on value systems, simply because people are really good at processing the simple way of determining how, it's without precision, but they have an abstract of an equation, pretty much. That's why our entire action is based on it. It's really complicated. Even for me, thinking about how the exact experimentation done over 1,000,000 times, it's still quite complicated. Because this is definitely hurts. And if you just do it slowly, it hurts less. You do this without thinking, without processing any information, you just know how much it hurts and how much this hurts less. However, you can do it in math, like how much energy is put into it. You can write equation and take you a year to finally get in the concept. But no, we don't need, our mind doesn't run off that system. Our mind doesn't run on precisional data. It runs on abstract of data. And our brain is like 1,000,000,000 times better at processing this kind of information than precisional data. That's why, Of course, this is classified information. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I do want you to understand it deeply, because this is one of the fundamental value systems. It's not even on my online lecture. But yeah, actually don't talk about it in public for this particular processing information research. Well, I'm not going to provide any more information on it, but this is basically the way how it works. It's about 1,000,000,000 times fast. It's real time. Meanwhile, mathematics, solving equation, it takes much more time. And this thing, this way of processing, I'm not gonna say the exact term for this processing, but forget it. I'm not gonna tell you. I'm gonna shut the fuck up about it. Okay. The reason why I don't talk about these things is because some of the fundamental things is very important, but I don't talk about it because much of value systems is still unknown for some of the behavior. Philosophy changes your way of thinking, and many of the things are still being tested, even on me. And I'm going to talk about more of it. Actually, I'm going to talk about the issue of system philosophy on your personal way of thinking. And also, I'm going to talk about issue of drug use. I'm going to talk about reasons for drug use in the next video. Because I just watched some documentary and they say a lot of people got addicted into drug, and I figured that I'm going to define it. And I'm gonna give my approach to the problem philosophically. Alright, so this ends this video.